Okay, so hi and welcome to the To Be or Belong podcast, where I interview inspirational outsiders who go against the grain. And today I'm here with my two Palestinian friends, Ziad and Ahmad, to talk about what it's like to feel like you don't even belong in the country in which you were born.
Mhm.
So let's talk about Palestine on a personal level. So, what did
Yeah.
your grandparents experience, or were they part of the people who were pushed out of their land by the
Okay.
creation of an Israeli state?
Okay. My village, Al Fallujah, was attacked by the Palma. That was a Jewish militia.
How old were you when this happened, or did this happen to your
No,
grandparents?
that was in 1948. So
Okay,
I was born in a camp for refugees as a third generation member of refugees in a camp for refugees. So once these people were kicked out, they have been trying to go back since 1948. And the UN asked Israel many times to let refugees back, but they're not doing so. So they had to stay in the camp, waiting and waiting and waiting. And now we have a fourth generation of refugees that are still trying to go back home. Okay. And by the way, I live in West Bank, so that's in Palestine. So in West Bank, there's like 22% of the population, they are refugees. And the Gaza Strip, over 73% of the population are
Or
refugees.
refugees.
so what was it like growing up in a refugee camp?
Living in a refugee camp isn't the nicest, let me say. So houses are really crowded. So technically, my camp is barely 1 kilometer square, but there are like thir 13,000 people, something like. And by the way, there are some camps like Balata. It's less than 1 kilometer square, but there are more than 35,000 people living there.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a camp, it's a luxury if you have a window to an ally of like 2 meters depth, just one side of your house with one window. So it's pretty crowded. It was hectic to be raised there, to be honest. So first of all, it's not a nice experience to be born as a refugee and to be born in such a place, trying to go back home, but you're not allowed. During the Intifada, and during my childhood, I faced really tough times. They were attacking almost every day. So in cities, they have been in cities for certain number of months, like in Ramallah, for example, or
So
in
they were so Israel was attacking your refugee camp.
exactly, they were
Yeah.
raiding the
With,
camp.
with what?
And by the way, because my house was almost at the entrance of the camp, they always used to make my house as a military base. So they used, for example, to raid the camp for 1 week. During that 1 week, they used to stay in our house and to raise the Israeli flag over the house. So my father, being a refugee, he had that issue of not leaving the house. So my father had that word that I'm not leaving the house, even if you have killed all of us. So the experience of being expelled out of our houses in 1948 is really triggering, and it's a part of who we are. So okay, you can kill us, but we're not leaving the house. We're not
Right.
doing. Oh yeah, so we're not leaving the house. So they
So
used to look.
when you say they attacked, how did they attack? And if you're in their house, they came
Okay,
into your
so
house.
once they attack, they pump the entrance of the house. Like once in a sudden, like 2 a.m. in the morning, you find soldiers in your bed, well, just around your bed. Okay, so we didn't have beds, what we called them beds. So we used to sleep on the floor on a
Wow.
mattress. So you would find them in the room with
Wow.
lights
Yeah. They just
and
barged in.
aiming at you with the guns. Get up, get up, get up, and then you get up and you start talking with them, and they would have one soldier who speaks Arabic, and he would be telling you that this house is being turned as a military base by the Israeli army, and you should leave the house. So of course my father would say, I'm not leaving the house. So they used to lock us in a room for like 7 days. So it depends on the period they're staying. And we needed to like knock on the door if you wanted to go to the toilet, to the bathroom, or what so on. And yeah, that's it. And I remember myself as a kid, and my brothers. So that once a soldier came in and told us if we want some chocolate, one of the soldiers. So of course we have refused. And he told my father, "Why do you teach these people to hate us? Why do you teach kids to hate us?" My father, like, there's no need to teach them. You're already invading their house and they have been locked in a room for like 5 days. Would you expect them to love you?
That's
That,
crazy.
yeah, and by the way, he didn't like that, and he just left. So yes, that this was part of what we used to have. And by the way, once they leave, we would have no furniture, so they would destroy everything. They would just do whatever they want. Sometimes they just break the glass of the house, of the windows and whatsoever. So yeah, that was it.
But what was
During
what was the purpose of this raid? Like, what did they hope to achieve? Intimidation
um,
or
arrest
Yeah,
people,
I
and
want to
sometimes
support
they
this.
used to train. So sometimes they used to train. So they are coming for training. So they want to put soldiers in in a contest. So they're using us as a library rats sometimes. So they are training. So they attack camps. Okay, because attacking a city would make more problems for them because they're attacking a big city. But in camps, they can do so. And people in camps, they're more tense. Okay, when there is an army, so they want to put soldiers like in a real context, and that does mean that basically people are not threatening. Okay, because if you can use a place to train, then people aren't a threat. And by the way, every time they've raided the camp, they have killed people. Sometimes
wow?
they come, yeah, sometimes they come to arrest, sometimes they just come to train, and sometimes you don't know why they're raiding. So they are an army, you cannot ask them. So they just come and raid. You cannot tell them why
You
you're
never
doing so.
did you? So is it possible to move houses in the camp, or is it like that's the one place that you own and therefore? Because did your family never think, oh, this is a really horrible place, like location, for us to be right on the entrance, or you just didn't have that choice?
Okay, the land is given to us by the UN. So and we have built like a construction on there to live. So you cannot leave your house. It's your house. It's your only place to stay. So you wouldn't
Right.
have another option to move. So if you wanted to move, you would need to have the enough money to buy a piece of land outside the camp and then to build the house. And that's super expensive. So most people on the camp, they don't have this privilege.
And so,
That's what.
what did your parents do for a job, and how come they didn't manage to have the money to?
Okay, so my parents, my father got his PhD, and once he got his PhD, came in academic staff at a university here in Palestine. So his salary improved. Okay, so
While living on the refugee camp, he had a PhD and he was working in a university.
yes, by the way, it's the only investment for refugees is to study. It's the only investment. So the highest percentage of educated people in Palestine is in the refugee camps because technically they don't have land. They don't have land because they have lost their land, in, and they don't have business. So there's no thing to lean on but to have a job. And if you wanted to have a job, you should be educated. So they invest in education. So people invest in education in the refugee camps. Okay, because it's your only way to get out of the camp. Sometimes I used to be in school once they used to raid, and they would take you. We used to go home with the UN people, so the UN officers. They used to come to the school and take us home because the Israeli army is already raiding the camp. And sometimes I used to be playing during the afternoon. We call it the Asr time. So you go out to play with the kids in the streets. And sometimes they used to raid. And we had like, so our parents used to talk us a lot about this. It's like if they've raided and we're out of the house, where should we go? So if we were playing in the northern part of the camp, so we should run to our grandparents' house to my mother's side. But the lower part of the camp, we should go to a friend's house, family friend house. So I think it's not fair to teach your kids on where to escape once such a thing happens, because
Yeah.
kids are not supposed to have such an experience.
So
But
where did you so how did you get out? Did you get out through education? Because I know
for
that you were a
education, yes.
Japanese
So
No,
my
scholar.
family
he's still
became
living. He's still living there.
okay. I'm
You still
living
live
in the area, but not in the camp itself. Okay,
Yeah.
right.
so we moved out of the camp, but I'm still living in the area of the camp. Okay, because
How old how old were you when you moved out of the camp, and why did you manage to do that?
how did we manage to do that?
Yeah.
When my father became a university professor,
Right.
his salary improved, so he got the enough money to invest in getting the land and building a house.
I
So, and
see.
by the way, we've moved like a
How
few
old were you
years
at that
ago.
age?
So when we moved, I think I was 20, 23 or 24. I'm now 27, so that's not a long time ago.
So
Yeah.
23 years on a refugee camp.
Yes,
And
exactly.
then
Yes.
when you came to England, because uh, for those who don't know, we all met at Leeds University, so you were both Chevening scholars who
Yes.
came to England. And so was that after you left the refugee camp, or was it before?
That was 1 year after.
Right, okay.
1 year after. Yes.
Okay, and so Ziad, what did you experience of
Yeah.
Israel growing up, and what was your experience of
So
Israel?
I'm not gonna talk about refugee camps because I don't live in a refugee camp. I live like I have refugee camps surrounding my city because every city has refugees now. I'm gonna talk a bit about like freedom of movement. We have invasions as well in like cities. They don't just invade refugee camps; they also invade cities. I had an experience when I was in 2002 when I was 7 years old and when I was 9 years old. The Israelis invaded my city with tanks. Used to assassinate some of the people in my city. Of course, the whole city is on lockdown. They see you in the street, they snipe you. Even if you're a kid, they just go in the jeeps. They say, "Okay, this is a curfew. The city is shut down. You cannot go to the streets." They allow you. They used to allow us 1 hour a day and 2 hours in the weekend to go and buy stuff from the supermarket. So like live. Otherwise, if you pop your head, if you're in the street or in the windows, because my area was in the like the center of the city, almost in the center. Uh, so lots of people they got sniped. My they once came to they came many times, but once they came, they took my father, they took my uncle, they arrested them, put them back 1 week later, and then they took them again, and they used my father as a human shield while searching houses. Lots of the places were taken as
Yes.
military base. My mom tried to talk to them in English, but they started shouting at her, "Go in the house, or else we'll shoot you." Of course, I live with my family. I live with my family. So my grandmother lives downstairs. My father and my mother they live upstairs. My aunt she was pregnant with she had triplets, and her husband was taken away, arrested by Israelis. She was on her own. We couldn't go like walk 200 meters to get her. You know, it was she was like calling us. She says she cannot move. Uh,
Yeah.
and the Israelis arrested my uncle, her husband. So
This was
we were
because
trying.
she was pregnant. Like, was she heavily pregnant then? She was
Yeah,
nearly
yeah,
having.
yeah. She was, yeah, yeah. She was in the 8th month. She was in the 8th month, and she needed to go. Like she needed someone to help her, and couldn't go and bring her because we couldn't use the car because all the streets are blocked. All the cars are smashed by tanks. Like
They
they
can
just
shoot
go.
any moving car. They
They,
can shoot
they
any
see
moving car. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the Ukrainian police officers, he was hiding or he was sleeping like under a tree in our garden. He was like a new trainee, and he tried to sneak and bring some food, because we haven't been able to get food for a long time, for 2 days, I guess, and he was sniped. Um, is that I didn't know I was close to this person. He was called Ziad. Is like my name. And he was 19. And the
He
next
was
day,
killed.
Yeah, he was killed. And because he stayed like in our garden and he stayed in our house for a few days. I used to play with him when I was young.
Mm.
What happened is that suddenly he disappeared. I didn't know where he went. His fellow police officers, they brought his picture at a poster. I didn't understand what that meant back then. I
How
saw his
old were
picture.
you?
I was 9 years old and 6 years old. That was in 2002. So I didn't know what happened to him. I told them why I didn't read back then.
Mm.
I was like really young, and I asked them what happened to him. They said he was in, and they took him back to his village. Um, and I forgot about this. And after a few years, I asked again when I was 9 or 10 years old, and they told me he was killed. I like yeah.
So by the
Uh,
Israelis, did the Israelis find him in your garden, or was he just
no, no, no,
disappeared?
no, 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 no. I wanted to say something. He was living in our garden because if he enters the house and the Israelis come and find him in the house, they will
Yeah.
arrest us all. Like they will like why are you hosting a police officer who does not live in this house? That has to mean something. So in order not to get us in trouble, he used to sleep under the tree, and he was trying to help when he went to wanted to buy some stuff, like to go to the supermarket. That's when he was shot, like smacked in the head. Of course, Israelis, they used tanks, and they used to these like really big calibers when they used to shoot at houses. So if a person gets shot in the leg, his leg is cut off. If they shoot him in the stomach, he might be like split in half. Like it's not something like
So,
uh,
do you think this similar situations have happened for most Palestinian families on your street, or was it like
no. It's in the whole West Bank at that time.
the
Oh,
whole West Bank?
Yeah,
so it
they
was
made it.
worse in some places than other places, but
Yeah,
it was the case everywhere, but in different levels. But it was the case everywhere. Like in
Ziad,
Jenin, they have destroyed. They have wiped the whole camp. So they have destroyed a whole camp in Jenin. So yeah,
yeah.
Ziad, you were telling me that you live in the safest place in Palestine.
yes,
Yes.
yes. This is the safest. Imagine.
This is the safest. Yeah, so it is
Can you
the safest.
explain, actually, Ziad? Can you explain about the different sections of Palestine and what's different
Yeah,
in them?
yeah. So Palestine, we call it the historical Palestine, which is
Okay,
from the north.
just before Ziad
Yeah.
starts, he talked about using people as a human shields. By the way, they have learned this technique from the British Army during the 1930s. So they used to tie people on army vehicles, and I've seen this
Mhm.
myself here. So if they don't want people to throw rocks on their jeeps, they would tie someone on the front of the jeep. So for
Yeah,
people
they,
don't
they
do
spread
anything.
they spread their hands on the car and they just use them as a human shield.
Yes, so they they
This
they
is what
they do this
Yeah.
a lot. So to tie
this is
someone,
this is what they
yes.
did
So
to your. This is what they did
No,
to your dad.
no. My father's case was different. They usually use kids when they want to tie them on the car. But my father, they took
yes,
him as a human shield because they wanted to invade the house.
yes,
So in case anyone was armed, anyone did anything, my father would be in the face.
yeah.
So
And
they.
my area is like where the Palestinian Authority is.
The main complex, which used to host the president of PLO and the Palestinian Authority, Arafat, is just like 50 meters away from Ziad's home.
Mm.
Yeah.
The main
So it was a
complex of
dangerous
PA.
place. From the PA might shoot at the Israelis. That's why they used my father as a in like
Yeah.
And
because
so they did this for intimidation, or what was the
Yes.
purpose?
Yes. So
yeah
okay. So if they're like moving to another house, so let's say they have invaded Ziad's house and they're moving to their neighbor's house, they would take Ziad's father to walk in front of them, just ahead of them. And then once they get to their door, they would ask him, okay, knock the door and ask them to open the door. So they use him to be in the front. So in case anything happened, he would be the one that would be hurt, not them.
what's the point of the raid? Like intimidation? Why do they want to raid
So
Palestinian towns?
you would never
They
know.
were looking.
They wouldn't be telling you. So they would just pump the house, knock the house, do whatever, knock the door. Sorry, they break in and they start looking for things. Sometimes they do this just for fun. I think, and I
Yeah,
myself I believe in this. So once they're like in a mission in an area, they can do anything. No one can ask them. Sometimes they
yeah,
used to try to shoot things because they're having fun. Okay, someone in the knee because they're having fun. So you cannot ask them why you're doing this. So
why are
you
you
can
doing this?
be killed. You
You
can
just
be
can't.
yes,
You just cannot ask them.
yeah,
If
you're
you raise
killed.
your voice, you get arrested. Even if you're a child and you ask them what are you doing, or you start shouting, or you try to like pull your father's hand while they're arresting him, they arrest you with him. They like put you in a jeep, take you, and there's a 99.7% conviction for Palestinians. Like kids, one of the kids, he's like now 19 years old. He was arrested when he was 13. He's still in prison.
Wow.
He
So
spent
right
his
now,
years.
you said, Ziad, you said that you are actually with people right now celebrating one of your friends who has just been let out of prison.
Yeah.
How come he was in prison?
So what what happened is uh, it's something funny, you know. He's a Palestinian living in Jerusalem,
Right.
and a male guy who's like has like I think you saw him. He was like big, you know. He was a so that person living in that area poses a threat. They just arrest him without a charge. They just It's called administrative detention. They can arrest you without a charge or court. You can stay there for 6 months and then they can renew it without a court,
Yes,
without a charge. They suspect that you have the will to do
to do
something.
something wrong.
So
Yeah.
how long was he in prison for?
This time, months. But
Two
like 3 months
months.
ago, he spent 9 months. And before,
Yeah,
like in total, if I want to sum his years, he spent 7 years in prison. To sum it up,
exactly.
yeah.
So yes, Isabella.
And
So
he,
they can arrest you because they think that you might do something wrong according to their standards. So they can arrest you for years because they believe if you are free, you might do something wrong, but you haven't done anything yet.
You
and
haven't done anything, you haven't said anything, they have nothing to criminalize you at. They just suspect that you have the will.
Yeah,
and
you have the will.
Ahmad, your father was in prison. Is that
Yes,
correct?
my father was in prison for all.
Most of our
Yeah,
parents were in prison. My
For what
father,
reason?
my
For what
uncle.
reason was your father convicted, Ahmad?
my nothing. The first time my father was in prison, he was 15 years old. Okay, so what actually? Yes, and they, by the way, and they have beaten him really hard to a point that they thought that he was dead. So they have thrown him outside the prison, and in the morning, some just found him and took him to the hospital. So technically, there's okay. So sometimes they always say you have tried to prevent the Israeli army from doing its mission. Okay, that's what they usually tell you on the call, that this person tried to prevent the Israeli army from doing its mission. Okay, so so sometimes what do you mean by its mission? Sometimes attacking your house, sometimes trying to raid the area, so throwing rocks and poking against them is a charge. So technically, they want to kill you, they want to arrest you, they want to take your land, your house, and they expect you to shut
To
up.
do nothing
Okay,
and do
so
nothing.
if you've done anything, then you're a terrorist, and you're trying to they what they say that you're trying to ruin the peaceful status of the area. So they give you big labels for doing anything that they just dislike as a military occupation. And by the way, here in West Bank, we're not citizens, and we're not allowed to be citizens of any country. So we're not citizens of Israel. At the same time, we're not Palestinian citizens because there is no such a country that's called Palestine yet. Okay, so this is what they do.
Can you explain
Uh,
about areas in Palestine as well?
yeah. So we have the borders of 1948, Bank, and we have Gaza. You know,
Yeah.
those are the places exist now in Palestine. The places 1948 borders, Gaza, and the West. So the Gaza is fully under the Palestinian control.
Since 2005, okay? Because technically it was so heavy for Israel to continue to exist inside Gaza Strip because of the armed resistance in Gaza. They have withdrawn from Gaza and they try to block it. And it has been under blockade since 2006, I think, 2006.
Mhm.
Okay, but Gaza
So
and West Bank both had the same kind of situation until 2005. In West Bank, we don't
yeah,
have an armed resistance, or like in Gaza Strip.
yeah. So what happened is that in the West Bank, they divided the areas into three areas. So Area A, Area B, Area C. Area A is under the Palestinian civil and security control. Area B, civilly under the Palestinian Authority, security under the Israeli Authority, and Area C is totally civil and security under the Israeli control. So what that means on the ground, it means that the Palestinians cannot use their lands in Area C and Area B, which is 82% of the West Bank.
So where do
Yeah.
you live?
I live in Area A, and we are not
Okay.
allowed to expand.
Let's say Leeds. So the city center would be Area A. Okay. But once you get out of Leeds, it's Area C. So you're living in like an island in Area C.
Yeah,
Okay. So you're
we cannot.
only allowed to manage things for citizens in the city itself. But once you're leaving the city, there's a checkpoint. It's Area C. It's under Israel.
Yeah,
Yes, Ziad is staying inside the city, so he's in Area A. But if he
yeah.
wanted to move out of the city to the next village, let's say, he would need to go through Area C, which is under Israel, and there's a checkpoint. So once you get to a city in Palestine, you should go through checkpoints. If those checkpoints are closed, you cannot get out or in.
If you put a fence surrounding your land in Area C, the Israelis come, they demolish it. You need a permit to do anything in Area C, and 99.9% of the permits are not like they're refused, but they're refused before getting submitted. You're not allowed to
They're not
submit.
even processed.
They not even processed. And those areas are meant for the development of the settlements. We have 12,000 meters square in Area C, like my family. And we cannot use them. And now the Israelis, they built a wall, including our land, and now it's part of Beit El settlement. We're not allowed to have access. We're not allowed to ask for it. We're not allowed to do anything with it. Now an Israeli settler is building his house on my land, you know? And this is 82% of the West Bank.
And
Those,
so do you both have
yeah,
passports?
Okay, we call them passports, but they are travel documents, not passports,
they're not.
because we're
Say if you took COVID out of the situation, would you be able to go to England tomorrow?
No.
no.
Would anyone
Ahmed,
be able to in any
yes, can
situation?
Yes, please.
I want to, okay, I am a person who loves traveling. I like love going to other places. I love traveling to Europe, to see other countries. I've been to America. When I was in the UK, I took the chance and tried to travel as much as I can because I know when I'm back to Palestine, it's hard. It's really hard. So most of the
So
countries I need a visa.
how come you were able to travel to the UK and to Latin America and all of that?
It's because I got a scholarship from Achievement, which helped us, and the British Embassy helped us. They brought the British Embassy personnel to the West Bank so they can interview us. So what happens is usually when you get a visa, you need to go to the embassy. And the embassy is either inside Jerusalem or inside the borders of Israel, between brackets. So I need to apply for a permit from Israel so I can get to the embassy So I
What?
need to, yeah. So I need to
Yes, you
synchronize.
would need a permission. The permission is
Yeah, I need.
given is giving from the Israeli army.
Let's say I'm traveling to the UK or the US. Now I'm applying for a visa, and they give me an appointment. So to get to the appointment, I need to apply 3 weeks or 4 weeks earlier to that appointment. I need to apply for the Israelis to let me in for those 2 hours so I can have the interview. And after that, I go back. If I made it to the interview, I go back. I need to receive my visa. So I need to send it by mail to go to Israel, and from Israel to go to Jordan, from Jordan to the embassy. And then it comes back, which needs almost a month. And after that, I need the permission, you know, from the Israelis and from the Jordanians to cross the borders, because we Palestinians, we do not have an airport. So we need to travel to Jordan through the borders. We cross the Palestinian borders, the Israeli borders, and the Jordanian borders to get to the airport in Jordan, and then we can fly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gee.
Yes, and
and
the funny thing is that the main airport, the airport of Tel Aviv, was a Palestinian airport. So they
yeah,
took
called
over the
Allot.
land. They took over the airport itself. It was called a Lid Airport, and so they have taken the airport and they have prevented us from traveling through the airport. So you would need to
Jerusalem
travel
had an
to
airport.
Jordan.
Gaza had an airport. We have the Palestine. We had airports, everything.
So you
It's
have Israeli settlers living next door to you or close who can travel through and they don't need permits to get into
No,
Israel.
there are places that I cannot go there just next home. But anyone who's a Jew can just come to Israel and visit these places. Like this simple. Like there is a town next to where I stay, it's called Asiran. There's a very high mountain in there. Well, to our standards, it's like almost 1,000 meters above the sea level. So I, it's one of the things that I want to do in my life is to see the view from there, and I cannot do so because technically it is taken by the Israeli army, and I'm not allowed in. I'm not allowed to go there. Any Jew person that was born and raised in England or the US can simply come to Israel and contact the Israeli army, and he or she can simply go there and see the place. And here, where we stay, we're not allowed to go to like 90% of the area, while someone who's living just next door illegally can go anywhere in the country
anywhere.
because he's a Jew and I am an Arab. So that's the only
Yeah,
difference. That's the
the thing.
only. The Mediterranean is only 9 kilometers away, but they cannot go there. So we just can see the Mediterranean from going to high places in order to overlook the glittering water before the sunset.
Wow.
It's just 20 minutes,
Yeah,
20-minute trip away. So it's nothing. But technically, we're not allowed to go almost anywhere in the country. And you would need to apply to permits to go to almost anywhere as well. Okay, and they
yeah. So
just can refuse. They can refuse you for whatsoever. They can tell you you're refused by the Shabak. They can tell you you're refused by the Israeli police. You are, but we're
but
not telling
Ahmed,
you why.
you also need a reason to ask for
Yes,
it,
you cannot tell them,
and you
okay, I
always
want to go to the sea. This is
I need a
not.
permit.
This is. This is not a reason for them to ask for a permit. Yes.
So
So
you need a valid, very good reason with proof. Like, for example, my wife lives inside the borders and I need to see her. That's not a reason. It's your fault that you got married from someone who lives inside. It's not ours. You know,
yes.
So what's a good reason?
it's what's a good reason? Let's say you have, God forbid, you have cancer, and the only hospital that can provide that kind of medicine is there. It's and only you.
Like they can tell you that your cousin might be a bad person. So a bad person for them is that he just keep talking, or maybe he's a member of a
Post
Palestinian party and
posts
so
on
on.
Facebook or
So you
something.
can be refused because of your cousin. Okay. So
Yeah.
this is an enough reason for them to refuse you. So let's say you're applying to a visa to Canada from England, and they say, okay, your cousin doesn't seem to be behaving well, so we're not giving you a visa.
So are you guys ever scared of talking about Palestine or your experiences of living there Because couldn't you be then
Yeah.
portrayed as a bad
Yeah,
person?
sometimes yes. Once you want to do something, yes. If you've settled for like years in England, once you come back, they can tell you you haven't been here since 2 years. We're not giving you your ID back. So you're now without a Palestinian
You're
ID.
not allowed to
Go
go back
back
to your
and
country.
enjoy living in London. Good luck in London. Don't come back.
Um, I want to talk about the freedom of speech. You asked about are you scared of saying something, doing something? So posting on Facebook about Palestine, like free Palestine, putting posters like on Facebook. I'm saying like social media. You can be sentenced, time in prison, and it goes for months. I'm not saying sentenced like for 2 3 days. I'm saying for months. That's like for like a tiny post. And I'm not saying a violent post or something. I'm saying that,
Yes, yeah.
or saying
Sometimes,
that it's against
yeah.
human rights. You will be sent on the number of shares, number of likes, and interaction on your Facebook post. If you say that Israel violates human rights, number 1, 2, 3, 4, this poses a threat. So yeah, if I'm scared to talk
Okay.
about Palestine, yes, I am.
Sometimes they can
Um,
arrest you for posting something like farewell, my friends, or I will miss you, my friends. You can be arrested for such a post. Okay. So they would say, okay, farewell, my friends. What are you going to do? Are you going to do an attack? So
are you going to
also,
take
even
revenge?
if you're not mentioning them, they can do pragmatics, like say, okay, what does he mean? So I will miss you, my friends. So they can arrest you for such a post to see
Mhm.
why your friends are going to miss you.
So
Which is
what do you say to those who might be thinking, well, since Hamas fires rockets, then Israel is trying to defend itself?
Okay,
yeah.
so we have been being killed since 1948 and no one is hearing a shit about us. But once there is an Israeli who might be hurt, the whole world is hearing about this. Okay, I'm not saying that the Palestinian armed resistance is a pure angel. But the thing is, if there is Hamas, that's because of Israel. That's because those people are think you know that in Gaza they think that they are hitting their own villages. Okay, so they're 70% refugees. Let the refugees back. End your occupation. Give them equal rights. There would be no reason for them to do anything. So basically, Israel is the
But
reason
if you cut
behind.
the water, cut the electricity, throw sewage water on their lands, they have no food,
Yeah.
no medical care, no supplies at all. What are those people going to do?
And so
Essentially,
they always try to put things out of context. The context is that Hamas is firing rockets at Israel. The thing is that those people are refugees and they are firing rockets at Ascalon, which is their hometown. I
I,
myself,
I,
I don't care about the one state solution. I don't care about the two state solutions. I don't care about anything. I just
we just
want
need
the
our rights.
apartheid to end.
Yeah,
I want to be go back home and to be treated as Jews who are living back home. That's it. And then you can negotiate things. Okay, I don't care about what would you call me as long as I am living as any other person in this land. Once I have a free access like anyone else, once I can be a human being in my country and not be a refugee. And by the way, you know that 70% of the villages where refugees are from are still empty to date. So they're still empty. Okay, so they are destroying their villages, making them refugees for no reason, and they're just telling you if you came back there would be more Arabs than Jews. I don't care. We're human beings. Okay.
Why do you think that they are doing all of these intimidation tactics or invading places? And why does apartheid for Palestinians exist? Like, is it just due to a power structure and
Okay,
them not
I would
seeing?
say something.
no,
So,
it's
so this situation is the perfect situation for Israel. We are not citizens, and we're not allowed to be citizens of any other country. So technically, they do want you to be an Israeli citizen. At the same time, they don't want you to have an independent, sovereign state. Okay, so we're like stuck in middle of nowhere, and they are in charge of the security and the land.
According to the UN, they are obligated to provide food, like electricity, blah blah blah, because they are technically occupying us.
Yeah, according to the UN, they're asked to let the refugees back.
Yeah. So they just deny, and just tell the UN to, like, first say fuck off. They just say it right to them. The UN tried to bring human rights activists to investigate their crimes. Like, I don't know why the UN just decided to do that right now after 73 years of killing us, but they just did. So Israel told them, okay, I'm not letting them in, and any activist who is in Palestine, I'll kick them out. Any activists who tried to stop me, like Rachel Corrie in Gaza, they just killed her by going on top of her with the bulldozer. You know?
Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
She's
true,
a British
yes.
citizen. Like many activists were killed. There was an Italian activist who was in Hebron. He was shot because he was trying to help kids. Like you're not allowed to even investigate war crimes. And let's say something about war crimes. Do you know all the things that are happening in the world wars? Israel is the #1 in the world of weapons developing. So they developed the technology. They tested on us. They just tested. They test the tear gas. They test bullets. They test rockets.
Let's say one Palestinian moved to England. He's not allowed to do certain professions, even though he's not coming back. So, for example, like I'm not allowed by the Mossad or any other Palestinian to go into like a nuclear kind of specialization or anything that's related to arms, okay, to anything. We're not allowed to do this. And many Palestinians got assassinated because they were doing such
Research.
degrees or such degrees or such research.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, they're trying to gather Palestinians while they are staying up. It's not just Palestinians, but sometimes the activists, like you yourself, you would expect coming to Tel Aviv until you're banned from entry for 25 years. So they would be having some information about you and others. Okay. And that happened. Sometimes they deny your entry if you told them I'm going to Nablus or Ramallah. They say you're going to
They
West
say,
Bank.
why do you want to go
get in.
there?
So I used to work as head of volunteers during my BA in my university, and we used to make an orientation session for those internationals coming to volunteer in Nablus. So they should say, for example, in the airport, that we're here to see the Holy Land. So we're here to see Jerusalem. And they will ask you, where are you staying? If you have said Bethlehem, no, that's the wrong answer because Bethlehem is in West Bank.
You cannot meet the people. You cannot hear their stories. You cannot
Yes,
witness
and they sometimes tell people, okay, you're coming to Tel Aviv. It's really dangerous to go to West Bank or to any Palestinian town. Don't go there. Don't go to West Bank. Always ask. Always make sure you're driving on Israeli roads. You're staying in an Israeli tendency. So technically, it's even sophisticated for people trying to visit. And if your name is a Muslim name or an Arab name, it's even more sophisticated. So if you're like a British Muslim and you're called, for example, Muhammad, they would investigate you. And that could remain for hours and hours and hours, and they can just deny your entry. So it's this
after you
not
arrive.
just against Palestinians, but it's against anyone who's against their project.
Yeah.
So would you say that you're living in fear?
Yes, definitely. We're living under occupation. So we feel that our souls is cheap. Are cheap, sorry.
Yeah.
So our souls are cheap.
I can say we started believing that we live in fear. I realized that it's not a normal life when I lived in the UK.
Yes,
I realized
you would feel what is real life. One funny story. One time, I and Ziad were traveling to Newcastle. So that was in our very first month. So we had like 6 a.m. in the morning. So Ziad was still sleeping. So I called him and told him, Ziad, our trip is canceled. And he said, why? I told him because the checkpoint of Newcastle is totally closed. And he was still unconscious because he was literally talking to me while sleeping. So he started to curse and And so, and then he called me back telling me, I've almost believed this. Okay, life. This is actually what they try to also um, say here in Palestine. Like, go outside and have a life and leave the country. This is also one of their aims. Okay, so sometimes they actually help you if you don't want to come back. Okay, that's why they would tell you, okay, if you've tried or if you've decided to live in England without coming back and you're ready to withdraw your Palestinian ID, we would give you some privilege, like you can come back through have to travel to Jordan and come from Jordan to Palestine. And by the way, coming from Jordan to Palestine is the worst border you could ever cross.
Yeah.
It's the worst,
You get
technically the
searched
worst.
and searched, interrogated and searched, blah
And
blah
you can
blah.
spend hours on borders. So yes, so living in Palestine is like living in a big prison. You feel like you're their guest. You're not allowed to do many things. Uh, you're not allowed to go to almost anywhere. Here in Palestine, we talk about distance in terms of kilometers, not kilometers. So I would say that's far away. There are 3 checkpoints between here and Ramallah. So that's far away. Or if
That's
someone
the
is going
distance.
to Bethlehem, you would get something like, did you know that you would need to cross the container checkpoint? Like that's really far away, which in fact is not. Bethlehem is only like 1 hour and 30 minutes. But because you have to go through checkpoints, it's a long distance. And by the way, why do you think it's risky to go on roads these days? Because they can shoot you and that's it. So you can be killed because you're crossing the checkpoint and they just can say the soldier thought that that person was suspicious. That's an enough claim, that's an enough reason to
That's
be killed.
yeah, enough reason to
Okay?
shoot you
And you
dead.
cannot sue that person. You cannot know that who was that soldier. So
But I went and lived in the UK and saw how safe I feel. I never felt safe before. So I never knew what safety means, you know?
yeah,
Like, for example, the first trip I booked, it was to London. Like, when I opened it, like, one of my friends, he lived in England, and he told me, let's go to London. And I like opened it on Google Maps. I said, man, that's 280 kilometers away, or something like that. And he told me, yeah, but you can go by train. And he opened the phone, and he just booked a ticket, like as simple as that. For me,
yeah,
that was something new. No emptying your car. They cannot stop you. No one is stopping you. No one is searching you. No one is pointing a gun. No one. You're not afraid of settlers who are what Israelis call civilians, between brackets. They call them civilians, but they're heavily armed, like with M16s, with guns, and you can see a teenager with an M16. That's totally normal. You can see like a female on the beach, if the permitting go, and see the beach. You can see a female wearing a bikini and having an M16 on her back.
Wow.
Like it's totally normal to see to walk among Israeli civilians, what they call them civilians. For us, they're not. They're heavily armed, you know. So I
So
didn't have.
did you start speaking out, Ziad, after you returned from England more because you had then experienced what a different life was?
Yeah, when I came back, I started talking to these people, trying to spread awareness, because I really hated to see how we Palestinians are being silenced by all means. Like, no one is even allowed to talk about Palestine. If you are in the US and you say anything about anything against Israel, which is anything in favor of Palestine, you're anti Semitic.
Mm.
And if you talk about the BDS and boycotting Israel, you're a terrorist.
Mm.
It's like the BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. It's like just boycotting Israel. By Israel, they consider it as a terrorist group, which is insane.
Wow.
Insane. Like anyone can boycott anything except for Israel, you know, because you will destroy their lives. How would you destroy their lives? Um, yeah, so living in fear. Yeah, I realized that we were living in fear now because I haven't felt safety ever before. Like the bad thing is that everything for us is normal now. Like now I'm talking to you normally. I'm not emotional, you know. And like 3 days ago, I lost a good friend. He was shot in the head. He was hospitalized for 2 weeks, and now he's dead. in a peaceful protest. And in that peaceful protest, 9 Palestinian kids were killed, all between the age of 15 and 18. Yeah. Actually, before everything started to be on the news, like after Hamas started firing rockets, before that, 8 Palestinians were killed. One of them lives in the area near Ahmad. He was like a 15-year-old football player, you know. He was killed.
Yes.
And why he was killed? Because he was trying to like make the settlers go away from his land. It is known that Israeli settlers love to burn Palestinian trees. If they see an olive tree that is old, that's good. If they see a Palestinian land, they throw sewage water. If they do not throw sewage water, they just go burn it. It happens constantly. It never stops. That's why for us, it's like such things are normal. Now, if I hear that a friend is dead, I like next day I'll go to a wedding, which is I don't know, like psychologically it's exhausting, but that's how we have to live. That's how we are forced to live. Um, and we Palestinians, we try to have fun, we try to dance, we play music, we love music, we love parties, we love weddings.
Do you have any Israeli friends?
So Israeli friends, no, because literally all the Israelis, especially if they're our age, are serving in the army. You have them as your friend. By a one phone call, you will be banned to travel and banned a permit for
By
your
the way,
life.
there's no capacities in which we can meet. This is apartheid. We cannot meet them. This is also
Yeah, and what?
dimension. So they are armed and they serve in the army. And it's really weird to be talking to someone who might have killed your brother or your friend. Okay. So the difference in Israel is that all people are involved in the army. Okay. So, even in England, sometimes I used to meet them to have some conversations, and they sometimes in arguments used to ask about my details. Okay. And that's so risky because they
Yeah,
should, of course, be able to talk with someone in the army. And we don't have rights here. They just come and attack the house and arrest you, and
yeah, yeah.
that's it. I was raised in a camp for refugees. I've been denied lots of my rights. I was named after my uncle who was killed by them. By the way, he was 24 years and he was killed in the camp. So I'm called Ahmed because my uncle was called Ahmed and he was killed aged 24.
Yeah.
So you
My
met you met you met an Israeli in England. You met them when you were traveling.
Yes, yes, three times, three times. The first time I got out in Heathrow, I went to get myself a sandwich, and when I came back, I left my travel document on my bag on the chair, and when I came back, there was Israelis around, and they were talking that that there is a Palestinian in Heathrow, okay, which is something they don't expect. It's the stereotype of Palestinian, a savage living in West Bank or in a village that he must be kicked out or killed. So this is what most of them believe.
Sorry, Ziad, what were you saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that like there are young people that are being born and raised in Israel, right? Um, I don't know what happens, but they are literally brainwashed. Like who who thinks that because God promised a land 3,000 years ago or whatever, that you have the right to kill the people living in this land now? And they believe that all the Palestinians they do not have souls, that our souls goes to animals and their souls are the chosen ones. So when you talk to an Israeli who's being raised there, that's the kind of discussion you will have with them. No peace discussion. There is no raising awareness. You are just not a person. You're something that is living in that land that will take soon. And another thing, and when I got to that level, I like processed it so much to just accept that I am standing in front of a person who's serving in the army. Like serving in the army means that you have to daily invade Palestinian villages daily, burn Palestinian villages, like enjoy it, make jokes about it, um, play like a game with your friends. Who's the one who's gonna snipe in the head first? And that's documented by video by them. Like if you Like we Palestinians now have lots of videos from their Facebook, from their Twitter, from their like accounts because they publish it. So I don't know what kind of discussion, if
So
it's called a
these
discussion.
were discussions that you had in England.
So in England, people,
Okay,
to be
they
honest, they
try to
all,
play the angel's role in England. This
yeah,
is what I can say.
we were killed
They
in the,
because there would be other people. They would try to seem as those liberal people, those people who are trying to look for a solution. Once you get in arguments, they don't have anything to say. Literally, like once you're in front of people, what they can say is that their right is because Palestinians didn't want to have separate countries, and they can say that God has promised Jews this country like 3,000 years ago, and they're trying to come back. Where do you live in back home? They say, where do you? I won't be telling you where I live back home, of course. Okay, neither I would be telling you my full name. Okay, so they're trying to make it as they're asking about my details. We cannot meet in here, and there's nothing that you can make out of my details except for telling the Shabak, and this is
Yeah.
what we do.
Ziad, I think you've muted yourself, by the way.
enough being silenced.
Exactly.
No, I just remembered when I was in one of the countries in Latin America, I met someone from Argentina in Colombia, and that guy he was like like a friend of a friend. So yeah, he told me I'm an Israeli, blah blah blah, and he gave me his like Instagram. And on his Instagram, he was taking pictures like behind the house that he just burnt as a soldier, you know. And he was taking pictures in old vintage Palestinian houses and like taking pictures of the dates because we Palestinians, when we build the house, we like equate the date of the house, Jaffa, and all those places. And he says, like, he writes such a racist, like, the house is burning, but I'm fine, or something like that, you know? That guy, he's an Argentinian. He was paid to go to Israel to serve for 2 years, get his Israeli citizenship after serving for 2 years, you know, and then he goes back to his country. He gets a paid vacation. He gets lots of money. He gets what is called the combat visit, or the I don't know, Israeli army trip or something like that. So they posted. No, no, no. I'm not joking. If you see the
Yes, I
advertisement,
know, I know.
you can look them. You can look them on YouTube. They saw the video myself. I couldn't search of it here in Palestine because it doesn't come up on the internet. But when I was there, you can see like Israeli soldiers, like really like models, you know, saying, "Yeah, you'll have fun here. Try our military experience." And with the female soldiers, like holding guns, they go there for 2 weeks. They teach them how to shoot. They take them to a Palestinian village. They shoot few bullets. They shoot tear gas cans, and if they like, they can stay. And it doesn't matter if you're 15, if you're 16, if you're 13, you want to learn how to use a weapon, you can go there and just learn. And the thing is, if you want to have a conversation with, this is the point. This is the point. You asking me if I had a conversation with an Israeli. If you want to have a conversation with Israeli, with what language? They either speak Ukrainian, they speak Russian, they speak Latin, they speak Polish, they speak German.
A
If you're
few of
lucky,
them
they speak
speak
American.
English.
Few of them they speak English because they're
Few
all
of
from
them.
all around the world. There is
And
nothing
most of them
unites
they
them.
have
They have,
they have dual citizenships, like the Israeli
yeah,
citizenship, along with the country that they or their parents or their grandparents came from. So those who came from Germany,
67% have dual
yeah.
citizenships, and you cannot imagine that if you're having a discussion with an Israeli and he just doesn't like what you say, he just can call for his location or take a picture of you. The next day, you're in prison. And
Wow.
if you're in prison, he can like say that you said, okay, I want to take revenge. If you say that word, you're for 6 years,
Yeah.
5 years, I don't know. If you're a part of a political party, any political party, you go to prison. If you raise the Palestinian flag inside the borders of 1948, you go to prison. If you host anything, if you talk about anything, if you talk about peace, anything other than the Israeli standards for peace, which is with their legs on our necks, you're screwed. So yeah, having a conversation is not actually on the table. Please, like, respect me as a human being, at least, if you want me to have a
Yeah.
speech.
We
Or
we
bring
have
me,
conversations sometimes here. Sometimes like once you get a permit and you get in the buses, you get to the beach. Sometimes you can have some conversations with them as long as they can speak English, of course, and they're always wed. They're always wed. So it, once I've met a Syrian one, like a Syrian Jew, and he was so excited to talk with me in Arabic. And he told me about the way from Syria, like in 1980s, and that he wish he could return to Syria as it was back then. And by the way, there are lots of racism in Israel against Jews who are not
yeah,
Europeans, and they have a an identity conflict, the Arabs, because being a Jew is a kind of ethnicity for Israel. So you cannot be a Jew and Arab. It's either an Arab or a Jew. Okay, so you can say that you are a Jew with an Arab heritage, but you cannot say that you are like a Jew, like saying a Muslim Arab or a Christian Arab. You cannot say you're a Jew Arab. You can say you're a Jew with an Arab heritage. Okay, so they've got like an identity crisis. Some of them, especially those who are not Europeans.
What do you see as the solution? Like, what do you hope for the future?
So I want to live as any other human being in this country with the same right as any Jew in this country and in my village, back in my land. That's it.
Okay, and Ziad?
so this is a hard question to answer, because if you answer, I want to the Israelis to leave Israel, we are this is like this statement is considered a terrorist statement, and I can go to prison. So I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna say that I need my basic rights. Like, I need to move freely. I need to have access to water, to electricity. I need to I need to have access to my own land. I need to move freely without feeling fear. I need to
And to go to the
freely,
beach whenever you want.
yeah.
Yes,
Look,
that one. That one.
yeah, yeah. I no, I don't want to hope for the
So you
less. Yeah,
can't go to the beach.
no, of
Yes.
course I cannot. I cannot, because the beach. Yeah, I know the beach is 1 hour drive, but I need a permit to go to the beach. I've been to beaches in England more than I've been in Palestine, even though the beaches there are amazing. Like in Palestine, you go to the occupied Palestine, you see a wall that is 1,000 years old, just near the beach. You see old castles there. You see the vintage restaurants there. It's all taken by Israelis now.
And you
You
can't
see
go.
no, no, of course I cannot. I cannot go to most of the land. I only can move within 9% of Palestine.
Wow.
Go to 80% of West Bank. So you're talking
And the
about the
worst,
1948.
and the worst 9%. I cannot. Um, okay, I won't stop the cannots. I want to say what I want. I want to live as a human being here. To be honest, I want to have an identity. I want to be a citizen. I want to have a passport, not a travel document. I want to be recognized as a Palestinian with a Palestinian state. Um, for that to happen, I want Israel to stop bringing and lying people and bringing them to live in my land. I want the U.S. to stop funding this apartheid, because that money is used to pay Israelis to come to and serve in the army and kill us. Um, like, it is complicated. Like, on one hand, 67% of the Israelis, they have dual citizenships, and they can move freely around the world, and they can go back where they came from. And some, they have been here for 73 years. So like, doing it by the calculator doesn't work. So we only need human rights. Like, I don't care if it's two states or one state, as long as we all live under the same civil rights order and security rights order.
I,
If I did a felony, I don't want to be in a military court. If I stole a car, if I had a fight with my friend, I don't want to go to a military court, and I don't want to be shot by the military. I want the police to handle it, like a normal person, you know?
I
I don't
understand.
know.
I feel like what you're asking for is really not that much, just to have basic rights. But then
No, but what I said to Israel, it's too much.
what you
Yes.
said, about like Israelis potentially going back to their homeland, or back to where they came from. I can imagine. So if these Israelis have lived there for 73 years and they've got their livelihood, they were born, raised
Okay.
there. Palestinians were
Look,
thinking
Exactly. That's why I said
this
it's
is
not
a
simple.
thing
It's complex.
that I say I'm against kicking anyone out of the country.
Yeah,
Okay. But
that's why I
at
said
the
it's
same
complex.
time, I cannot
Give
live
me your
with
rights.
kills. Okay. So if you have killed someone, if you have been responsible for killing people and doing horrible things against those people, talking about who were born here, who are living here. I'm not with kicking anyone
Yeah,
outside of the
no,
country,
at all.
regardless of his or her faith, as long as he or she is willing to live as a citizen in this country, okay, and to accept anybody in this
Thank
country,
you, Ahmed. Yeah.
then you're welcome. We are welcome to be a citizen in this country. But the issue is that we are not on charge of any of these things, but they are. Okay. So once you end the discrimination, once you stop missing in people's lives, then you can talk about living together. Okay. It is you who can make a change. It's not us. If you're giving me my rights, then there would be no thing to fight about. Okay. Don't take my land. Don't kick me out of my house.
Yeah.
Treat me as a citizen.
And
Let me go to the
and the
beach
apartheid.
like you. Give me an access to water resources as you. They sometimes try to link rights with a final solution. I don't care about a final solution. You need to give me my rights now, okay? And let you take ages to have a final solution. But you cannot say, I'm giving you rights until there is a solution. I'm not living for 2,000 years, okay?
yeah.
I need to live as a normal human being. And
Right now, right here.
right now, and then you can find a solution, or maybe there would be no problem for you to find a solution for.
Like, look, if you ask about the Palestinian, what do you see the solution is? Everyone will start, but the thing they miss the most, you know, um, like for me, I miss the movement. I miss my human rights, the ones that I've touched and felt when I was in the UK. And like people ask me like where the Israelis are gonna go, and I say I don't know. I don't know. We're not we're not like people who if they open the borders we go and take over. How we do not do that.
We talk about the armed resistance. You know that the armed resistance used to tell the exact time they won't be missiling anything uh, to Tel Aviv or in Tel Aviv for civilians to go and feel safe in those hours.
Yeah,
Okay,
they
which is
used to
something
alarm them.
they, as an
We have shelter.
army, has not done. Okay, so the Palestinian resistance told them that from I think that day from 10 to 12 a.m.
You
Sorry,
can
p.m.
go
You
move
can go
freely.
out. There would be no things for the civilians to go out and do their stuff. Okay.
It's like we are animals, you know. It's like
Yes.
we like kill people randomly.
Yes.
We never do that. We never did that. The
Yes.
only people we face are Israeli soldiers, are Israeli armed settlers. You know, like for example, when some individual is trying to kill an Israeli, they kill a soldier. They do not kill a child. They do not just randomly do it. No, even
Ziad,
the armed
even this, if they're not occupying West Bank, there would be no one who would be killed. Okay.
yeah,
Most of those people who go for these acts, most of them would be trying to take revenge. So imagine your brother being killed and you have got nothing to do. It's expected that you might just bring anything and try to attack any soldier. Okay, so this is the case in most cases. So you're oppressing people. You cannot tell them how they're supposed to react.
What they're doing is despicable. So my friend who passed away 3 or 4 days ago, um, they called his mother when he was shot, like on the spot, because they know the guy. So they saw that guy, they shot him in the head, and then they called his mother and they told her, "Now we shot your son." And right when he died, they called her, "We killed your son, and we killed his cousin in 2015, who's next in your family." Like it's yeah. Like
What?
in my city,
Yeah.
the safest city, they raided it 1 week ago, and they shot a guy, and they then called his mother and they told her, "Sorry, we shot him by mistake." So the special forces, they go into that area and they took a guy out of the car, they benched him to the ground with their legs, and they started shooting bullets at him while he was on the ground. And they called his mother and they told her, "Sorry, we shot him by mistake. He looked suspicious," you
Well,
know? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
how do you feel about having children in Palestine? Do you feel like you do you ever feel reservations about bringing someone
It's,
into
it,
a world
I,
without human?
it's a bad idea to raise kids in here. Being helpless as a parent isn't the best feeling. And I could remember some moment during my childhood in which my mother used to gather us in the middle of the house in the camp, and she used to hug us and to try to pray. Okay, she used to pray once the tanks are going close to the house, because sometimes they just can hit the house and destroy the house, or you can be
Yeah.
shooting. So I didn't understand that feeling as a kid, but as an adult, that was the feeling of helplessness. Okay, that's it. She couldn't do anything to save us.
What about you, Ziad? Do you feel reservations towards that?
Now I understand why my mom like tries to call me every few hours. "Where are you? If you're going any place near any checkpoint, let me know. If I'm going, if I'm visiting Ahmed, they cannot leave the phone. They call me every 5 minutes. Are you okay? Are you
They
still
call me
driving?"
too.
Stuff like that. I don't want to be that parent, but I want to have kids. Yes, I want to have kids, and I will have kids, hoping that Israel is gonna stop.
How do you date Palestine?
How do we
Okay.
date?
Yeah.
Okay. So rule one and rule one. So we have rules to date in Palestine. Allowed to date non-Palestinian to love a girl or a lady who's not Palestinian, or technically who's not holding a Palestinian ID. Just forget about living back home. So you would need to try to think about living abroad, because you technically cannot bring your partner
Cannot
to
bring her
Palestine.
back.
You cannot bring her, or you cannot bring, or she cannot bring him, or whatsoever. You cannot bring your partner to the country. Okay. And sometimes dating
What about if
and
I
date
was Israeli? Could I not come to Palestine and live there? Could I come
Yeah.
to Palestine and date a Palestinian and live there?
Yes, but
yes.
I cannot visit you in Israel. Like if you have a house in Israel, I cannot visit you. So
Right.
we have this. Yeah. I know
Yes.
something about dating. No. So if you date an Israeli or a Palestinian with an Israeli citizenship, she can come to the West Bank, but me from the West Bank, I cannot go visit her. I
Right.
Yeah.
cannot go inside the
So
border.
we don't have the
Uh,
privilege that their ID would give them.
if I love a Palestinian who's in the US and she does not have the Palestinian ID, but she's a Palestinian, or if she's a Palestinian from Gaza living in Turkey or living in, she cannot come to the West Bank.
Yes. If she
So
holds the
if
Gaza ID, she cannot come to this part of
come to the
Palestine.
West Bank,
So how do you date? Because I actually noticed recently that on dating apps, Palestine doesn't exist. You can't put your location as Palestine. So are Palestinians on dating apps? Like, does that? How does that work?
okay, we interact socially more. Like in all the places, we like most of like if you have a wedding in a refugee camp, lots of the people will go to the wedding. Lots of people will go to a party, to a
People
celebration.
are
Uh,
extremely social.
yeah, for the dating app, yes, you're right. Palestine doesn't exist. I registered mine in the UK. That's why it still works here. I dated someone who's not Palestinian living in the UK, and it ended because if I wanted to stay with her, I cannot come back to my country. So it's
Yes.
either her, yeah, yeah, if I stayed with her, I have to live abroad, and if I live abroad for too long, they will throw my identity, take it from me, and I can never come back.
Yeah.
Wow.
At the same time,
Yeah,
you cannot bring her.
if I want to come and live in Palestine, which is also amazing, despite all what's happening, I think we people know how to live. We can survive. Um, I cannot bring her here. She cannot stay,
Why?
you know, because the Israelis do not allow her to. If she comes, her permit is out. She has to leave, or she can stay illegally. And if they caught her, they'll just dispatch her.
Yeah. In Palestine, any person that you might come across would be a Palestinian. We don't have nationalities. You're not allowed to settle here for whatsoever. Not for marriage, not for work, not for dating, not for anything. So all of people in West Bank, all the people in West Bank are Palestinians. Okay,
Mhm.
they're all
So
Palestinians.
we
So
only date people from the West Bank.
internationals can come to visit, maybe for a week, two, three, but they cannot settle in
Yeah,
Palestine. They cannot. So you
yeah.
as a person cannot live, cannot work here, cannot get married to a person from here and stay. You cannot do anything to stay.
So you
It's
have
all
to
different.
basically you have to date a Palestinian who lives in your specific area.
Yeah,
Yes.
Right.
It
yes.
would be really challenging. Okay, so look, so here in West Bank, you might be able to date a Palestinian with an Israeli citizenship, okay? Because simply they're allowed to come to where you stay, at least, okay? So we can meet in West Bank, for example, okay?
Mm.
So it's
But we
true
cannot
that
go to West
I or someone who's from West Bank cannot go there, but at least they can come. So there is a context in which you might meet, okay? And you would have to go into some arrangements for the kids to have the ability to go both sides of the border, but at least you can still meet, okay? But when it comes to a Palestinian from Gaza, for example, this is impossible because basically you cannot meet. There is no context in which you can meet, and even though you cannot bring her to West Bank and she couldn't bring you to Gaza, okay? So there's no way that you can live together inside Palestine, okay?
Wow.
So there's no way.
But
So
I like the dating question.
exactly.
Some people
But you
really
know,
not.
but you know, as a person who lived in the UK, it's not an easy thing. So sometimes you can see a nice girl and you can think and you can start thinking that she might be a potential, but you would then you would then start thinking about changing your life
Okay,
plans because if
and
if
that's
if I'm if I'm
before
settling,
even going say hello. For example, I like a girl in the UK, right? I like her. I want to approach her. I speak with her, and I really like her. So then my brain starts like doing like this because I'll start thinking, okay, if I really like this girl and I want to stay with her, I cannot go back with her to my country, and I cannot like so this conflict in my brain will start like doing shit.
So it means
it's
that you then
either
can't go back to your
it's either her or
Zilla,
going back to my family and my country.
wow.
if you like someone and you previously know that you cannot stay with that person having your current, okay, this is a big issue. So once you're like in a country like England, you would question even your feelings, okay?
Wow.
So
Yeah.
saying that this lady might be a potential, so I should try to avoid her for not loving her and then having no choices in my life, because technically I cannot just be hanged in the middle of nowhere wanting to be with the love of my life at the same time I cannot have a life back home. This
or
is
cannot
not
meet,
an easy situation.
and, and I cannot meet my family. That's also something important. For
Yes.
example, it was a miracle that my family managed to come to the UK. They had visas. Normally, they don't issue visas
Yeah.
like that for
To this
Palestinians.
point, no one believes Ziad once he say, all my family got the visa.
Like, when I say that in Palestine, people say, "No way, no, 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 no
That's
way."
sarcastic. Yes, that's
Yeah.
sarcastic.
Wow.
Yes.
No, but it's something normal. We're not, and to be honest, in the 60s and 70s, things were even better because people were more comfortable,
What do you mean?
kind of. Because in the 60s and the 70s, let's say the Israeli army was less brutal than it is now. Like back then, there was no apartheid wall. For example, if you date someone in Jerusalem, you can go to Jerusalem, like more easy, like easier than now.
Right.
So it was more flexible. Like if you want to take your girlfriend to the beach, you can go to the beach. Like the communities, as Ahmed said, we live in area A, which is like segmented ghettos. Like
Yeah.
26 in a few days. 26 years old, managed to go around all the city. I know every inch of it because I have no other place to go. You know,
Wow.
I
Yeah.
cannot. Because I have the hope that humanity will win.
I hope that too. Yeah. Thank you so much for speaking to me, both of
Thank you.
you.
Thank you very
It's
much
really
for hosting
courageous.
us. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Of course. It's really courageous of you to speak out, so I appreciate it, and hopefully it will raise some awareness and people will understand a bit more about what's going on in Palestine.